6. What is your initial reaction when you saw this news, Blinkers?
I was surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that there was a couple different things that went through my head. If you didn't think Bregman was gone before, well, now he's gone because you got your first base sewn up and your third base sewn up. And the fact that you got him, my initial reaction was, well, what'd you pay for him? Because if you didn't overpay, I don't mind it at all if it's a shorter term deal. And then the last thing that came to my mind was, one, compensation about him signing here, and two, more importantly, are they going to spend any money on the outfield? And how far is he willing to go over the tax to get at least one corner outfielder? Because otherwise, I kind of like everything that they've done.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the plan in its entirety, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Walker, the player, I really like. I've wanted Christian Walker for quite some time, really ever since like the fading of one Yuli Gurriel. He's always been on my radar. He has some thump. He has pull power, too. I think he's going to launch some balls into the Crawford boxes, which is interesting, the makeup of this team. Like, you go from an Alex Bregman, who is a contact hitter, really doesn't have the power that he used to for some reasons that we're not allowed to talk about, but had a really good eye, would work pitches. Kyle Tucker, kind of the same way. And now you go to a Christian Walker and an Isak Paredes, who they have bunches of power. Paredes doesn't walk a ton, walks a good amount, not a ton, and then strikes out a lot. So it's a very different dynamic of what this team is going to look like offensively. I wonder if their struggles at home is why they wanted to add right-handed power. Because, like, they haven't been good at home the last 2 years, right? I wonder if Dana Brown looked at that and be like, okay, we got to take advantage of our configurations. We got to take advantage of our dimensions. How do we do that? We add Isak Paredes, who pulls the ball into the Crawford boxes, and you add a right-handed slugger. So I wonder if that was part of the plan a little bit for Dana Brown. But Christian Walker, specifically the player, like King of Twitch on the Twitch, is saying that he thinks platooning at first base is stupid. I mostly agree. Like, if you have to do it, there are ways to do it. I mostly agree. So now you have an everyday first baseman. Like, Christian Walker is going to be penciled into the lineup 155 times at first base. And that's great. He is a fantastic defender. He's a three-time Gold Glove winner at first base in the National League, 3 times in a row. Not over the course of his career. The last 3 years, he has won a Gold Glove. So even, like, I've seen some people, well, Crane didn't learn anything from Abreu. Well, Walker's contract's going to end at the age Abreu was signed, and at least he is good on both sides of the ball. He can hit and he can defend.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And I think that sometimes when you look at it, whether you believe, what Arizona's configurations or not, I think that the Minute Maid Park configuration, soon to be the Big Dyke, I think that those confines are going to really be conducive to
Why did you add
Christian
big in
Walker?
front of it?
Because we had the debate, and I figured if you're going to go, you might as well go all out. So, I mean, it's either that or the ice box. So
very different.
Yeah. I just feel like he's kind of been a late bloomer. I feel like that, he's really come on offensively. You can't dispute the fact that he is a glove over there that is going to be very, very helpful. And John Singleton, sorry, not sorry. I'm glad that Christian Walker is going to play the majority of the games at first base. I think Paredes plays the majority of the games at third base. He's also a pretty good defender, but I think that he's an above-average player, and I like the corners now on the infield.
Yeah, this no doubt signals the end of Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
Like, stating the obvious there, but it is done. It's officially over. You're not looking to re-sign Bregman, and because you have Paredes at third, you have Christian Walker at first base, which, it's pretty obvious that they were off of Bregman whenever they were deep into conversations with Nolan Arenado. I guess they just weren't going to answer the asking price of Scott Boras. I think Scott Boras priced Bregman out of the Astros plans, which was expected.
Do you think? Because I agree with you, and I thought, because there was a lot of Astros fans that were giving me pushback when I said Bregman's gone. If you didn't think Bregman was gone based on the Tucker trade and getting Paredes and Cam Smith, then you got to believe when they were talking to Arenado that he was gone. And everybody's like, well, there's still a chance. I go, where's he going to play outfield? He's not going to play outfield.
Yeah.
And so the question I have for you is, do you think in the midst of all this, before they ended up pulling the trigger on Walker, they went back to Boras?
Maybe.
And said either we're going to go this way, or this is our final offer, or we're going this way, or did they just go, we got to do what we got to do?
It could have been either way. It could have been with the first option that you laid out. It could have been where 2 weeks ago Boras said, this is our number, we're not budging off of it, and Dana Brown's like, okay, well, we're not paying that. Let's look at other options. We'll never be privy to those, but it could have went either way. I don't think that the Kyle Tucker trade was a precursor to losing Bregman. because I think that they wanted to add another bat once they traded Tucker. And it could have been Bregman, could have been Arenado, could have been Christian Walker. We were talking about on the show yesterday, do you think that Jim Crane would be embarrassed and act hastily whenever Arenado rejected his, or I guess actually triggered his no-trade clause to avoid the Astros and then act hastily and then sign Bregman? Because he's kind of known to do that, right? Crane at times can get a little bit, a little bit hastily, right? He fired Hinch, he fired Luno after the sign stealing stuff. He needed a first baseman, signs Abreu. He needed a relief pitcher after Kendall Graveman got hurt, and then immediately signed Josh Hader. I wonder if there was anything in play where Arenado uses his no trade clause to avoid Houston, and now Jim Crane's like, well, we got to do something, and then they landed on Christian Walker.
Yeah, it's possible the knee-jerk reaction once again landed on a more Rodeo Drive type spending spree. This time I'm happy because it wasn't as extravagant. It wasn't Josh Hader money. I can live with $20 million a year for 3 years for Christian Walker, assuming he's not going to be the next version of Abreu. And I really do feel like he's going to hit well in this park. But I say that with a little bit of apprehension because I thought that Abreu would do the same.
The reason that I like the Walker more than the Abreu, though, and I also like the Abreu signing, is that he plays both sides of the ball. Like, even if he doesn't hit like you expect him to hit, well, he's going to give you Gold Glove defense. Even if his defense starts to fade away, well, hopefully he's still hitting offensively. So I like that he's a two-way player over at first base.
And then people were bringing up Pete Alonso, and when you look at it, you compare the stats. He's really a poor man's Pete Alonso. He's a better defender. He's a little less in terms of the pop and the thunder in his bat. But overall, when you only get him for $20 million a year, and I don't know what Alonso's going to command at the end of the day, but I got to believe it's going to be significantly more than that. I think you did very, very well.
Yeah, I like the contract. The contract in itself. Now, the compensation stuff is I don't really understand the plan there. I think there's a little bit of a contradiction in the Astros offseason. But when you look at this independently of Christian Walker and you look at Christian Walker in a vacuum, I like the player. I like that he can play both ways. I like him in this lineup around Yordan Alvarez. I like him at Minute Maid Park. And I like his defense over at first base. And I like the contract. I think the $20 million AAV is pretty good for Christian Walker. I think 3 years is good for Walker. $20 million is less than I would have guessed he would have gotten AAV. And there were reports right around the time that Christian Walker got traded to Houston that he was seeking a fourth year. So, the fourth year would have kind of scared me off, too. So, I think that the AAV is lower than what I thought it would be. And after seeing reports that he was looking for a fourth year and the Astros got him for 3, that makes me happy. Because I saw the reports that he was wanting a fourth year right around the times that the Astros were deep into conversations with Christian Walker. And I just assumed that they were going to give him a fourth year. So, when I saw $60 million for 3, that's something that made me very happy. Now, I think when you look at the Astros, because I don't love looking at an offseason like one move at a time, one trade at a time, one signing at a time. I think it's very important to look at the totality of an offseason. It does feel to me that it's a bit of a contradiction what the Astros are doing this offseason. Like, you trade Kyle Tucker, who's entering the final year of his deal, to try to get younger, but you don't do it for Framber Valdez. You sign Christian Walker and you lose 2 draft picks. So, on one hand, you're making this rebuilding move, and then on this other hand, you're making 2 moves where you're trying to win now.
It feels like they're making moves, but there is no real grand scheme plan. It feels like it's almost seat of their pants. Like, they're using analytics, they're using some logic, but at the end of the day, you're not really sure how deeply the conversations are going in terms of the big picture, because I don't like giving up 2 picks to sign a Christian Walker. I love the signing too. I love the dollar figure as well. I love the fact that he plays both sides of the ball. But at the same time, I'm a little concerned that a farm system that has been depleted over the last several years, that they're trying to grow and rebuild, which was part of the reason why they took the package they took from the Cubs, is now suddenly going to lose 2 picks next year the minute that you sign Christian Walker. And that is a bit disconcerting for me, just simply because of the fact, a bit concerning for me simply because of the fact that those picks are going to be pretty important, especially when Dana Brown has a pretty good eye for talent.
Whenever they made the Tucker trade, I thought that they were going to take a little bit in the short term to try to get better in the long term. And then deciding to keep Framber really contradicts that point. And then signing Christian Walker contradicts that point.
Now, the only thing that I will reserve judgment on is they still could move Framber. I mean, they still could trade Framber and find a home for him and realize that what we've been talking about. If you're going to trade Tucker, you might as well trade Framber. If there's any way you could trade Presley, you could try and trade him too. But at the same time, getting rid of all those guys, if you know they're not going to be back at the end of the year, is beneficial because of the fact that I think you have your long-term and short-term solution as it relates to Bregman. The long-term and short-term solution for Tucker is still up in the air. if there's a way with trades and or the combination of trades and juggling some finances that you still could add to the outfield, I think you have to try to do that. And so that's why I'm not going to close the door that they might not still trade Fromber.
They've been pretty vocal that they're not going to trade him. Now
Guess who's been vocal?
Dana Brown.
Yeah.
And you can't really take Dana Brown all that seriously. So, although Dana Brown, whenever he traded Kyle Tucker, he was asked, like, do you think you're going to add another bat? And he's like, yeah, we'll probably be in the market for that. But for every time he says that, he also says Kyle Tucker's going to be here for his entire career. So I agree that you can't completely rule it out. Now, here's my hope, actually, because I think that there's an optimistic way to view this trade, and I think there's a pessimistic way to view this trade. Now, I do think that those moves contradict each other. Like, if you're trading Kyle Tucker, but you're keeping Fromber, and then you're signing Christian Walker despite losing 2 draft picks because of it and international money, I do think there's contradiction there, because trading Kyle Tucker is looking for the future. Keeping Fromber Valdez is looking for the right now. Signing Christian Walker is looking at the right now. So there's no doubt. It's a fact, in my opinion. It's a fact that these moves contradict themselves. Now, if you want to look at it from a pessimistic viewpoint, I think you can say that Dana Brown and the Houston Astros currently have a rudderless plan where they're like, oh, they'll make one move here, they'll make one move here, rebuild move here, win now move here, rebuild win move here, win now move here. Now, if you want to be optimistic about it, I'm choosing to be because I really want to like the Houston Astros offseason and like their prospects going forward, is that it's a good general manager making good moves, and he's not married to the idea that he has to be a rebuilding team or that he has to be a win-now team. And we talked about this in the past. Like, how do good organizations sustain winning long-term if you're not spending like the Dodgers, Yankees, or the Mets? You make the best move for your team every single time, even when it means trading a Kyle Tucker or holding on to a Fromber Valdez, maybe when the market is not there. What I'm hoping for is that Dana Brown is doing what is right for the organization at all times, and it's possible. Trading Kyle Tucker for 2 guys that can help you right now, and then a prospect that you hope helps you immediately, like pretty soon, maybe in a couple of years, and then you expect him to help you for 6 years once he is there, is a move that is in the best interest of the organization in its totality, long term. I hope that Dana Brown shopped Fromber Valdez. And whenever he shopped Fromber Valdez, he got all these offers on the table, and he didn't like any of them. Because that would now be good general managing. That would be Dana Brown putting every option on the table and figuring out what he has. So, hey, all of you general managers at the winter meetings, Kyle Tucker's available. Give me your best offer. Takes them all in. Okay, I really like this one from Chicago. We're going to do this. But he also does the same thing with Fromber Valdez. And when he looks at all the offers, he's like, yeah, this isn't good enough for a pitcher that we think is very good. We're going to hold on to Fromber. We'll trade Kyle Tucker. And then when you're looking at free agency, how can we best help our team right now? Okay, it's Christian Walker at $60 million for 3 years. Is it worth losing 2 compensation picks? And yeah, we think it's okay. So I hope that's what's going on with Dana Brown.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I would push back on respectfully is the fact that all we've seen so far out of the pitching market is freed go. But I think that, Corbin Burns is out there. Cease is on the trade market, supposedly. There's a lot of pitchers that are still out there. We saw the trade with the Red Sox that got the 4 prospects to the White Sox for Crochet. So when you look at that, you say, well, could Fromber bring you 3 prospects? What could Fromber bring you? So maybe Dana was he was surfing the market at the winter meetings and trying to get some offers, but I still think that there are enough pitchers out there, and the pitching market still has quite a few names that could be had to where I still think they could find a deal for Fromber. That's why I'll hold out hope for that, but I'm not so sure because the winter meetings obviously is the easiest way for it, in a short period of time to get everything you need.
The Christian Walker move, though, makes me think that, why would they trade Fromber? Unless you get blown away with an offer. And that's why I'm hoping that Dana Brown's not married to this idea of, okay, we're going to be a rebuilding team or we're going to be a win-now team. Because he's made a win-now move twice by keeping Fromber if they ultimately do keep Fromber, and then signing Christian Walker. Signing Christian Walker and losing 2 draft picks and international money is a win-now move. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's a win-now move. That's not a rebuilding move. Trading Kyle Tucker is a bit of a rebuilding move. There's no way to argue that it's not. I don't mind a team that is operating from both sides if it's always the best move.
But can it be both?
What do you mean can it be both?
Because it'd be both. You could be still winning now, but you could still be planning for the future. I get losing the picks hurts you, but you replenished a few picks in the Tucker deal that help you. So you do have a couple of guys. One immediately becomes the best prospect in your system.
Sure.
And so you got a couple of young players. Now, you're going to be able to win now. You're going to compete for the division, maybe more depending on what you still are able to do. If you trade Fromber, depending on whether
See, I think that's the hang-up, though, is Fromber. Like, if you hang on to Fromber, that's the biggest contradiction. Like, how could you trade Tucker and be both, but then hang on to Fromber?
I think that if they trade Fromber, then I believe more wholeheartedly they've got a plan, and there is a way for them to sustain winning now, and still be able to rebuild and reload for the future.
Yeah, I guess I'm taking Dana Brown for his word.
I can't anymore.
Which is fair for you to like. I understand where you're coming from there. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong on that sense. But then also signing Christian Walker's for the right now. Like he's a guy in his 30s, and you're losing compensation picks to do it. So I think, and this is like the most optimistic way to look at this, is that Dana Brown is looking at all these moves in isolation, saying, okay, this one, it makes sense for us, yes, right now, but then also into the future, like Kyle Tucker. Okay, he tried to trade Fromber Valdez because he talked about how he would listen for anybody. Maybe the return that he was hearing back just wasn't very good, and it doesn't like if you have the idea of like wanting to win, but then also reloading, and you make a pitcher like Fromber Valdez available, you're not going to just trade him to the highest bidder. You have to be okay with what you're getting in return. So the highest bid might not have been good enough for Dana Brown to be like, okay, we're going to trade him away, so let's keep Fromber Valdez. So I'm okay operating from that point of view, but if you look at it from a pessimistic point of view, where they're just kind of just haphazardly doing a bunch of moves to kind of appease everybody, that's scary. But what I'm hoping for is the optimistic point of view where Dana Brown's looking at all of these in isolation, and Kyle Tucker trade makes sense. The offers from Fromber Valdez just aren't very good. We want to still be good next year, so we're okay losing a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick. So I'm hoping that's what the Astros front office is doing.
And maybe there's been conversations with Fromber to where he really wants to stay. Maybe that's encouraging, and that's part of the conversation. Maybe he understands, and there's a way to find a happy medium on a shorter-term deal with more of the money that's competitive that he'd be looking for so that he can stay, and that's encouraging. And maybe Dana's finally gotten the reins a little bit more control when they really were scattering and just kind of taking shots in the wind to try and see what they could do and had a couple of deals backfire at big money that really cost this franchise. Let's hope that's the case.
Yeah, if they feel like they have a 50-50 shot at Fromber, then it makes sense from that point of view, too, whereas you felt like you had 0% chance at Kyle Tucker. Texter, I saw Tucker is more of a reload move, not a rebuild. I think that's a fair way to put it, but wouldn't Fromber be the same thing?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you get, right? I mean, I think I think BMAC and I were talking about this the other day, but if Crochet got 4 top prospects that are pretty close.
Now, he's got years of club control.
I was going to say, so maybe you get 2 prospects that are pretty close and 2 lesser than, but have ability that Dana likes. Is that enough? Is that enough for you to say, I'm willing to take that package as opposed to take Fromber for another year and then take my chances whether I can sign him or not, and if I can't, then he walks and you deal with it.
Yeah, I think that Dana Brown listened on Fromber. Like, this is my hunch. I think that Dana Brown listened on Fromber. He was willing to trade Fromber if the deal was good. And I don't think he got a return that he was comfortable trading a guy who can eat 200 innings and have a sub-350 ERA that can be at the top of the rotation. I think he shopped them and didn't like what he saw.
Now, let's also be just aware of the fact that because there are some big team with some big dollars and some big markets that are still trying, they might have 3 different scenarios on the table for what they might do. If they miss out on some guys, the Mets were supposedly interested in Fromber. Some of the teams that right now may pivot if what they were targeting as their plan A goes awry, and they'll go, okay, let's circle back on Fromber. Now we might be able to give you a better package than what we offered you the first time. Now that we know it's a little bit more of a sense of urgency for what we need now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like maybe Baltimore, okay, they miss out on Burns, they miss out on other starters that they want. Let's put together this fantastic trade package for Fromber in February. Which now Dana Brown might not have liked anything he was being offered in December. That can change in February. 713-780-ESPN HRP listener line 713-780-3776. Dill Fromber, give me an outfielder. I'm not trading Fromber for a big league outfielder unless he's young and has tons of years of club control. 9513, what round are the comp picks? So the Astros are losing a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick for signing Christian Walker and $1 million in international money if that's your flavor. The Astros will get a fourth-round comp pick for Alex Bregman. Schwab reported today. I use the word reported. Schwab tweeted today that the Astros were going to get a second-round pick for Alex Bregman, and everybody thinks that the Astros are getting a second-round pick for Alex Bregman. No, they're getting a fourth-round pick for Alex Bregman. And the reason they're getting a fourth-round pick and not a better pick is because they were operating in the competitive balance tax. They were operating in the CBT, which that's also something to watch as well. Like, will the Astros be going into the competitive balance tax again? Because the Astros had roughly $20 million to spend. How much did Christian Walker sign for? Signed for $20 million. So, like, I still think there needs to be moves for this offseason to be a good offseason. I think they need at least one more outfield bat, preferably a lefty. I'm not even picky. Like, if Jason Hayward's that left-handed bat, you play him in right field, I'm okay with that. But they still need one more outfielder.
I agree completely. Like I said, and I've been saying this and really preaching it hard the last week or so, is the fact that I cringe at the thought of having Jake and Chaz in the same outfield on a consistent basis as two of my three more than likely starting outfielders. That's not good enough for me. That shouldn't be good enough for anybody, and that shouldn't be good enough for Dana Brown and the Astros, and hopefully there's a way to do this. And you've been more on the number side of things and understanding how it all works, but, you know, a lot of people are coming back going, well, you don't have to pay Bregman, and then you don't have to pay Tucker, and then, you know, depending on what happens with any of the other guys, maybe you recoup some of that money too. You don't have to pay Verlander. How much of that then allows you more flexibility financially to spend a little bit more? I think regardless, they're going over.
Well, they're right at it. They're right at it right now after the Walker signing.
Okay.
Like, right at it.
So that means that if Bregman walks,
No. I mean, Bregman's already off the payroll.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about
There's not a
current
hold like
roster.
in the NBA. You have to hold.
No,
There's a hold.
no,
on
he's
the,
a free
that
agent
contract.
as soon as the season ends.
Okay, because
yeah.
from the NBA, he's a free agent, but you still have to have a hold on him until he signs
Right.
somewhere else.
Yeah. Unlike the NBA.
Okay.
Unlike the Astros' current payroll as currently constructed is right at the competitive balance tax. So either you either you go over it to sign some more players, which there's been some reports saying that Jim Crane doesn't want to go over it for a second year in a row, which I don't blame him. I don't want to be over the competitive balance tax either. Like, you're getting a fourth rounder for Bregman. Framber Valdez, there's a good chance he leaves you in free agency next year. If you're over the competitive balance tax, you're getting a fourth rounder for Framber Valdez. So I'm okay with operating under the competitive balance tax, just by a little bit. I don't want to be like way under. I don't want to be 50 million under. I want to be like 3 million under. So I'm okay if they don't go over. But I also think that they need to sign another outfielder. Now, if you want to get creative with how you do that, like, I think Ryan Presley would be the obvious contract that you want to trade. I don't think that Ryan Presley at $14.5 million is tradable. I think that you're going to have to eat at least half of that contract. But if you eat half the contract, it opens up $7 million for you to play with to be under the competitive balance tax, which brings you into Jason Hayward territory. So to me, that's the move. To me, you eat Ryan Presley's 50% of the contract, you retain it, and then you use that savings to go sign a left-handed bat, which I'm okay if it's Hayward. You know why I'm okay if it's Hayward? Because Chas McCormick is not a right fielder. I'm okay with Chas McCormick being an everyday outfielder for you. If it's in center, if it's in left, he can't play right field. If he's in right field with that arm, he's going to cost you tons of runs in a season. Jason Hayward, not a great bat anymore, but he can hit right. He's pretty good, and he's a great right fielder.
Great right fielder. Yeah,
so I want Hayward.
He's still got a gun, and he can cover some ground, and we saw that in the short time that he was here. And I would be fine with that if, you know, he was thinking about retirement. If he wanted to come back and play another year, he would be great for me in terms of at least one of the outfielders. I was thinking a little bigger before the Walker signing, and you and I had talked about it. I said, well, if you got Paredes that could play first or third, then you've replaced Bregman and gives you some help at first if you want a platoon. But then can you spend that money on a Teoscar Hernandez? Can you get a bigger name? Now with this Walker signing, I hate to say it, but I believe that Teoscar Hernandez is out of it.
Unless Jim Crane just says, the heck with it, and we're going to be $20 million over the competitive balance tax. He's going to cost you $20, $25 million.
Because I'm thinking the same thing you are. If there's anybody that you could find out, any way you could find a home for Presley, that's the biggest name that you'd want to move off the books, and that you could move on and get, you know, some financial help to try and get who you want. Other than that, I just don't see a lot of names on the roster that you could move for the kind of money that it's going to take to get the kind of player that a lot of people are hoping for.
Yeah. Teoscar comes with draft pick compensation, too. So now you're even losing more draft picks. In an offseason, we thought that the Astros were trying to get younger and rebuild their farm system, which is not the case. So I like Teoscar as the player. I think the move of Christian Walker eliminates Teoscar Hernandez. I think that you have to be looking for a under $10 million outfielder. And I also think it's going to require the Astros getting rid of Ryan Presley, which I think is going to be very difficult to do on two fronts. One, I don't think many teams want Ryan Presley. You go look at the middle relief market right now, you can find a pretty solid middle reliever for $5 million. Why would you trade for an aging reliever who's had his worst year in the last 5-7 seasons at 14.5? I think you're going to have to eat at least half, maybe more than half of the Ryan Presley salary, which I'd be okay doing. Now, at what point, like how much of the salary do you have to eat before you're just like, okay, I'm gonna keep Ryan Presley?
I mean, if I'm not getting back at least half of Ryan Presley's contract, I don't have to. If I have to eat more than half, then I'm not
You're
doing
just
it.
going to keep
I'm
him
just
at that
gonna keep
point.
him and ride it out for this year.
I'm close to that point. For me, it's anything under like $5 million. Like if I can save $5 million by trading Ryan Presley for a bucket of curveballs, I'm probably doing it. So I'm even willing to go to like 65%. But anything further than that, I'm just keeping Ryan Presley. Because now you're like, I didn't think Ryan Presley had a great year last year, but not having Ryan Presley on this team means that, okay, like Caleb Ort,
Right.
Forrest Whitley, like those are your
You're
replacements.
leaning harder on
Yeah.
guys that don't have the kind of experience and skins on the wall that a Presley has, regardless of salary.
Yeah, so I'm willing to pay I'm willing to pay Presley like $5 million. If I have to eat 90% of the salary, that's too much for me. So that'll be interesting to see if they can do that. But I think that they absolutely must add an outfielder to this team because right now they're outfield, and Espada's talking about how he wants to use Jordan pretty much primarily as a designated hitter. So if you don't sign another outfield, you know what your outfield is today? It's
Please.
Dubon in left, it's Myers in center, and it's Chas McCormick in right.
God, it's cringeworthy.
And people are talking about like Jacob Melton, which I do like the future of Jacob Melton, but he had like a 715 OPS in AAA. He's not ready yet.
Yeah, it's all like hopes and wishes and like the Cinderella stories at multiple fronts. Because then you've heard Leon. Oh, Leon's got a gun and he's really playing well in the winter ball, and Leon's ready now. Well, he was not anywhere close to ready when he came up last year. I can't rely or even hope that he's going to be one of the answers. I think Melton's at least a year or so away still before I would consider him to be in the mix. And now when you throw in the fact that Dubon's going to be in left on top of my cringeworthy Jake and Chaz starting outfield, that's not good enough for me.
Yeah, I would say that Melton best case scenario is like June or July.
To take a look
at least half a year.
Yeah.
If he's like hot in AAA to start the season, okay, that's different. But there's no way that guy's a starting outfielder opening day of the 2025 season. All right.